I just can't play that game. I'm not the guy who's going to go out and like hang out around a bunch of people and go to parties and go to premieres that I'm not part of. I just can't do it.
So you weren't at Diddy's?
That was never Diddy's. I don't know him. I never met him. I don't have nothing to do with it.
Hey, Mark.
Matt?
Theo.
Sir.
Oh, see,
Jesus.
you know, his feelings are hurt. His feelings are hurt now. Now he's gonna,
We'll bring him back.
You know, I was excited. I was excited until, I didn't realize, you guys were just going to all of a sudden hit it off as best friends over here.
No,
I
you have to
I had no
understand, there is no, it's only with provocation.
I had no clue we had so much in common.
I'm telling you, I feel like every time we bring somebody on the show that they might be a fan or whatever, but okay, we bring them on, and it seems like all of y'all are the same person. You get here, you get to talking before we go on air. It's like, man, I love just kind of being by myself. I hate being around people.
Yeah.
I just want to, more than 3 people around me. I just want to be lost in the woods somewhere.
Yep.
Every single time, and Mark's over there like, why have we not talked before?
How do we?
I think when most people hear that, they understand it.
Yeah.
One-on-one, humans are great. 2 to 3, they start clotting and
They start clotting. What?
and they start trying to impress each other and doing weird things. And it's just, I'm out. I can't do it.
Yeah. Well, I love people.
You do love people. That's the problem.
And flip-flops.
I love flip-flops. I love people. I love being around people. I love just embracing folks. Yeah. That's what I love about New York. I love New York.
Yeah, it's great.
I can walk the streets in my flip-flops, very dirty feet.
Ooh, very dirty.
Very dirty feet. I usually
Dangerous.
wear, like tennis shoes and stuff.
Do you love New York enough to live there?
Oh, no, I can never live there. No. I want to live in the woods. I enjoy living out in the country.
But you also like people.
Yes, I love visiting for a short period of time and then leaving and coming back home. And I love New York. New York's a 4 or 5 day trip for me, 3 to 5 days, somewhere in there.
You're a positive person who still has hope.
Yes, I have hope in the greatest city ever, which is New York City.
Wow.
Yeah, not me.
I've given up.
And you left.
No, I meant on humanity in general. But I love
on humanity.
Yeah.
Humanity's done.
Yeah, it could be New York, could be anywhere. I've given up on humanity.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're glad that you're here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It's when I saw that you were following the page and stuff like that, I was like, holy crap. This is juice.
Juice, yeah. One of my favorite series of all time. And your character, I mean, my goodness, the complexity of everything that you had to carry. And man, it was a
wild one. I'll see the boys this weekend. I'll go see Jax, Clay, and who else will be there? Happy will be there, and Alvarez. We'll go do one of these cons. So I see them all the time. It's so interesting. I had a guy come up. We were out at my wife got me out in public the other day when we were going to have some barbecue to see the Alabama game. And kid just came up to me and was like, man, why'd you have to turn rat? Like, that's the first thing he said to me. And I was like, man, that show was like 10 years ago. And I was like, he's still impacted
he's still holding the grudge.
But he was super excited. And, he obviously had a few pops in him, might have even had flops on. And he said,
good guy.
But what was so cool was that I realized that's kind of like a dying thing. Like, he still is talking about the show, and it meant so much to him because he had watched it from the beginning, talked to the kid and his wife for a little while, and he was just telling me how they don't make shows like that anymore. And I think what Sons, that's not around anymore, is that's 7 seasons, 13 episodes, 8 years of people's lives, 6 months off in between. You're coming back every 6 months. You're guaranteed, when it's coming back. And you basically live with these people, and they become almost like your friends. And I think Sopranos, Breaking Bad, The Wire, Oz, they all did that. And we just don't do that anymore. So I'm really glad that we were kind of right at the height and ultimately the end of that. I think the last is probably Game of Thrones that did that. Now it's
And then for me, like Sopranos, for me was Sunday nights. It was a non-negotiable.
non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Versus now, I mean, like I can watch Sons of Anarchy on the plane on my phone.
Or if you miss it, it'll come on. It's not appointment television, which made you committed. Again, you had to work a little for it. You had to give up your time for it, which means you had more feelings for it. And I think that's what's gone. We don't really have an emotional tie to things because everything's available to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good point.
You know what I mean? You don't have to put in effort.
No, you don't.
It was heavy hitting, man. I always waited every year. I was like, man, surely my phone's going to ring.
How did that not happen?
I don't know.
I don't know how that never happened.
I don't know. They got Chuck
really
on there. I mean, Chuck did some guests. I was like, dude, just call me.
Yeah, how did that not happen?
I have no idea.
Well, he wasn't the creator was definitely not, he was the furthest thing from a mark, not a wrestling fan, like didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then there were ones of us that he just didn't. And that's why he had on like, Courtney Love, like there were rock stars on, like I think Hasselhoff called us up and he was on, and anybody who called up would get on.
Yeah. Maybe I should have called.
You should have just called.
Yeah, maybe I should have called.
If you just called, you would have been on.
But I mean, like your character and everything else, it would have been perfect. I mean,
perfect.
Yeah.
It definitely would have been like the head of an MC, like out of like someone could have been out of Texas. Could have been one of the Sons chapters out of Texas. That would have been cool.
Yeah, and they made sure they wasn't going to make a comeback, man. Everybody got
everybody's gone. There's no one
got
left.
off, right?
There's two that I still hope for in my head. I hope for like the first 9, like Clay, and then when they're young, when they're coming back from Vietnam, like that, to see that all come back when Gemma's like 18. I'd like to see a prequel to that. Or when the boys are older, Abel and they're older and they're going to find out what happened to their dad and they're going to kind of take over. I'd like to see that.
That would be nice.
But it's not going to happen because Disney bought FX.
Oh my gosh,
Fox.
forget about it.
It's all over.
It's done.
Yeah,
Never
it's
mind.
over.
So when
You just ruined my day. You built me up and then you just cut me out.
I'm sitting there thinking, okay, oh my God, now
me
I
too.
love a good prequel.
Same.
Like I love a good
Me
prequel.
too.
And I was like, okay, is this happening? Like, are y'all having these conversations?
I bought in right away. Like I was like, you just set the hook on me. I was like, oh man, we're getting the prequel.
No,
okay.
Jackson's got something.
Instead, we're
going.
just getting another reality TV show. Perfect.
Oh, yeah. But there is something happening with us that might happen.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool.
Jax has talked about it recently. Charlie, I don't call anybody by their real name in that show. But
It's like wrestling business. I don't know
I
anybody's
don't even
real
know.
name.
When people say it, I'm like, who?
Yeah, no.
I guess after you've, you did what, 7 seasons,
7
right?
seasons, 8 years. Yeah.
And when you're around those guys like that, and you are, I feel like a show like that, it is almost like in the wrestling business, there's some kayfabe there.
Yep.
There's some like, you get into this character and you're almost like living this character
Jackson and
daily.
I didn't talk for 2 years. Once when he hugged me and said, "You betrayed me," we stopped talking in person. Until the prison scene where I confess about what happened to his wife. We didn't talk for real. We would like kind of give like one of these when we walked on set, but we didn't ever.
Was that intentional?
It was just kind of the way it was.
Yeah.
It's just like we had heat, so we just went with it. It made things real.
Made it easier.
It made it easier. It's not a big. I'm not going to go hang out and go to dinner every night and eat, stuffed mushrooms and hang out. It just didn't happen. We just didn't. We hung out a lot before it. So it went from that to 0.
Holy crap.
I love it. I just absolutely, I love that. Man, made my
too.
day. That's the way I roll,
That
man.
is insane.
And like
to
when
think
OB
about.
got, when he got eventually killed off, there was like this big ceremony thing at Jax's house where he like cut off his beard with a samurai sword and like this whole thing, and it was crying. It was like a whole thing. And then when the stuff happened with Clay, Perlman had a big falling out with a lot of us. There was this whole, it definitely blurred the lines, which I don't, listen, a lot of people get weird when you say it, but we felt like it's just the way what our life was.
You were living the gimmick.
We were living the gimmick. We rode motorcycles every single day for 8 years. I was never in a car. We were fully living the gimmick. The tattoos never came off my head. If, when I was filming, I would keep them on. They're like, "You want to take them off at the end of the night?" I was like, "No." Like, we were just in it. Terrible for everyone around you when you're playing Juice.
Yeah.
Terrible for the people
I can
in your
imagine.
personal
Yeah, I
life.
can imagine.
Terrible.
Were you married at the time?
No.
You weren't married?
Thank God. No.
Do you think that it would have leaked over into your home life?
I couldn't have done it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to play the character the same way because the way I work is really different. Like I'm a shut-in by nature now over the last 15 years, probably since that show. And I think that the way I operate in what I do, I'm not good with a lot of people around me anyway. So I have a hard time with that. Like I just finished this movie last week and like I was it was probably the hardest film I've ever done, but it was like for almost a month, if I'm not on set, I'm in the hotel room. I don't want to be near anybody.
Wow.
So that's, again, and then my wife and kids will come out and visit and, you know, they'll have the room attached, but my wife knows now. It's like, you come out, it's almost like you come out for moments, but you just kind of got to go away because you have a finite time to make things.
Yeah.
So it's like, let me just go all in on this moment. And that's just my process of the way I do things in life. Now, listen, there's other people, and Perlman's a master of it. Like Ron's one of my closest friends who played Clay. And Perlman's that guy who, like, when they're calling rolling, like they're about to roll, it'd be like rolling, he could literally be telling you a joke and it'd be like, yeah, and then, you know, we walked into this place. Hold on one second, hold on. And then he'll go right into character. And then the second they call cut, he'll continue telling the story. He's like an old dog who's been doing it for so long. He's got a way that he can turn it on and off. I just work different. I'm getting better at it.
Yeah.
I wasn't good during Sons.
You struggled with that too when you were really living the gimmick?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was that guy all the time. And it was just, yeah, it was really second nature. I didn't even think about it really after a while. I mean, it was just, yeah, this is who I am and this is what people are going to get. And obviously, you know, 2 marriages suffered.
2 marriages later.
Well, you know,
Yeah, I got married after
I had no
Sons,
business,
yeah.
but to your point, I had no business being married because that was the farthest thing from, you know, I was so focused on being Undertaker and the business. I mean, everything was centered around that and climbing the ladder and being on all of those things. So,
and we talk about that a lot. I mean, you know, amongst us, I was listening to something recently with Robin Williams, and it doesn't come for free. You know what I mean? Like when you're going for something, it doesn't come for free. You're going to sacrifice something, right? So I always say, what are you going to sacrifice? So for me, I'm not the guy who, I don't play fantasy football, I don't golf, right? I don't even drink, I don't do anything. It's like I know it's about my wife and kids and about work. And then in our case about the ranch and producing and starting. So I sacrifice other stuff that I don't even want to do because I did it when I was young. Like I have no interest in like doing something's got to sacrifice. So if you're going to be one of those guys that, you know, works out every day and then goes crazy with your job and stuff, you might suffer in your home life. If you're one of those guys that's all in on your family and all in on your job, you might suffer in your health. Something's not coming for free. You're going to lose something.
Yeah.
So I just had to figure out what mine were because I want to be the best at what I do as a career. I want to be the best father, the best husband, right? At this point now in my life, and be the best at these things. So what's going to suffer? So I'm just not the guy who does like boys' nights and like goes to this and does it. It's just not for me. Now my best friend is my producing partner. I've been best friends with him 40 years. So I'm talking to him. He's with me on all the movies. We're doing whatever. So it's like I get that through that. So I just think that once you realize it doesn't come for free, I think it's the people who want to have it all. You're not going to have it all. If you want to be great, you're not going to have it all.
Yeah, something's going to.
Something's going. You just got to decide what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does.
Are you glad that Sons of Anarchy happened when it did before the family then? So
Yeah,
that you
for
could have
sure.
had that experience and what you were able to accomplish there?
I mean, I'm literally the definition of, I don't even think how I got into the game could even happen anymore. Like I lived a very different life up until I was 23. I was a stone cold hustler, like in every way, dealing and doing and going down the wrong road. I had gotten, popped a few times, and I was easily ready to accept my faith that I had no other discernible skills except for how to hustle in the street. And I was okay with that. And then somehow acting comes about. I get into it late. I go all in on it, basically, I'm a big believer in if you're going to get into anything, you need to know the history of it. So I started studying the history of Hollywood, how it all started, how certain people got to certain places. You know, I started studying certain actors like Anthony Quinn and John Cazale and all these people that I loved, Claude Rains and these great actors. And I started studying them. And then I started as an extra. And I had to do extra work to get my SAG card. And then I moved out to LA. And then I moved out with my 5 best friends. I had $600 on me. And then I started working in bars because I needed to have my days open. And then if I needed, unfortunately, because I had no other discernible skills except construction, laying carpet, basically physical labor and because I played sports my whole life. And I maybe was caught in the illusion because I had football scholarships that maybe something was going to happen with it. But I wasn't thinking that, of course I wasn't going to play pro. It was just delaying the inevitable of this is going to end. And then what am I going to do? Mm-hmm. So the only other discernible skills I had was street hustling. So when I was in LA, if I was just getting roles. So after extra work, it would be like I had one line in Malcolm in the Middle. And then I had a few lines in this show, Boston Public. And then I had a small role in this movie. And I just literally built it up to a guest star in this show. And I climbed, I think I did 50 jobs before Sons.
Wow.
But they were all like 3 episodes of Grey's Anatomy and 2 episodes. And I was building through, but in my way. I think maybe things might have happened faster. I can't compromise. I'm never going to play the game that needs to be played in that business. I just can't play that game. I'm not the guy who's going to go out and like hang out around a bunch of people and go to parties and go to premieres that I'm not part of. I just can't do it.
So you weren't at Diddy's?
That was never Diddy's. I don't know him. I never met him. I don't have nothing to do with it. It's funny. My wife was reading all this. She goes, "Do you know him?" I was like, "I never met him. Never met him. Don't know who he is. I was a fan of the music. I like Biggie, but I don't know anything." You know, and then... So I just never did all that. I was just always about working. How do I get ahead? It was always like, how do I get this job? How do I figure out this? It was always like a game. And then Sons changed my life. And you got to understand, I auditioned for every single role on Sons and didn't get any of them. I auditioned for Jax first. Of course, I'm not Jax. It'd be like Danny DeVito getting Jax. It's not going to happen, right? So then it was like, okay. Right? It's like, of course I wasn't getting Jax. And then I read for like every other role, didn't get any of them. Went home and I was like, I can't believe I'm not going to get this show. I really wanted it. Because there was kind of a bit of a spiritual connection. My father left when I was really young, and my mother's brother, my uncle, moved from Northern California. He'd lived all over LA, California, and went to Northern. He was working in San Quentin, and he was a biker. And he had moved down to kind of help me because I was starting to kind of spiral at a certain age. So he came down and moved to New York with his family. Brought like his Winnebago, his trailer, and moved down there. He would tell me all these stories about biker clubs when I was growing up. And he would constantly talk to me about the history of the HAs and how he knew Sonny Barger and like all this stuff. And he would tell me, and he would almost talk about them like they were these mythological figures in San Fran when he was living there. So when the show came about, I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to do that show because he had died, my uncle. And I was like, no, I'm supposed to do that show. He would always constantly talk to me, but I didn't get any roles in it. 2 weeks later, I get a call, and the creator, Kurt, who never put Taker on the show, says, listen, I just want you in the show. I don't know what you're going to do. I don't know if you're going to have 1 line or 100 lines. I don't know if you're going to be in 1 episode or 100 episodes. But if you trust me, I'm going to write something. But I don't know if it's going to be worth your time or anything. But I just want you part of it. And I said, I'll do it. And he said, don't you have to check with your agent's manager? I said, no, I'll do it. And then I called my agent managers, and they were like, if you do that job, we can't represent you. And I was like, well, I'm doing it. They're like, but it's no money and it's this. I said, it's not about the money. I said, I'm supposed to do the show. And then I did the show.
Good call. Good call.
Yeah, and they didn't represent me anymore. But I wound up getting new people, and it changed everything. But the point is that I knew that was when I learned. I was like, you got to go. You're going to always know what the right thing and what it is, and other people don't. So I knew, and from then on in, it changed everything. He put a bunch of outcasts in the TV show, all character actors. nobody in that show was getting lead roles, and then that show took off because it was a bunch of hungry character actors who wanted to be great.
Made Peggy Bundy hot again.
Yeah, Gemma was the greatest character.
She was great.
Great.
Yeah.
You know, Perlman. I
Perlman,
mean, look at his face. Nobody's putting him in anything else. It's like,
He's typecast.
He's going back to the Beast.
he's going back to the Beast. He was always a Hellboy. He was always in makeup. But it was like, so then it just changed everything. And then, you know, it's crazy. It was my college.
When did you know the show was going to be a hit?
The season 2, when Henry Rollins came on and they did that, like the scene where she gets assaulted, like physically assaulted, and then that's when we got like a little pop. Because you got to understand, when our first episode premiered, it was some big political event. The night of our premiere was like the political event that they announced Sarah Palin as vice VP, so we had no ratings.
Yeah.
So we were like, oh, we're gonna get canceled. We were just like, oh, we'll have fun, but we're gonna get canceled. Yeah. And then second season, that thing happened with Gemma, and we got a little pop. But what changed, and this goes back to the way things used to be, the first 3 seasons went on Netflix. When remember Netflix used to acquire shows and put them on their streamer before they made originals?
Yep.
And then everybody would binge watch the show, and season 4 was about to premiere, which was the beginning of Juice's big season.
Which drove people over to FX.
Which drove people, so our ratings like tripled.
Yeah.
And then that was it. And we're, I think, the only show in history that the ratings never went down. Up until our final episode was bigger than the episode before, which was bigger than the episode before. It was bigger. Like, it just never went down. It was always a giant show.
Yeah, it was. From the time Clay got it,
yeah.
I mean, it was just like week after week. I was like, oh, no, not Bobby. No, not Bobby. Yeah, it was just like, it was just shocking. Like,
it was shocking.
You just didn't expect the stars to get whacked. I mean, it was just.
Yeah.
Nobody was safe. And again, I think that's,
safe.
Again, it made people kind of whatever. So yeah, it's a wild, and my whole life has been changed. I met my wife through that show. I have my kids through, like we started going over to Iraq and Kuwait and doing all these like USO tours and really going to all the bases to, you know, because our first fans were military.
Yeah.
Before anybody watched the show, it was military guys. Like they'd take it down range and they'd watch the show and they'd let us know. So Henry Rollins at the time was doing like Voice for Wounded Warriors, and he let us know. And, you know, I started going to all different bases across the country, and wherever we can go, we would get on planes and just go. And then my wife was working for Marcus Luttrell's, she was running his charity at the time. So we met, and then she was doing this charity boot campaign. And then, so everything in my life has come from that show. My production company, all the movies, all the TV shows after has come from that moment. So it's like there's always a moment, which everybody has a moment, and then it's just what are you going to do with it after it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the moment.
Mark.
Yes, sir.
Our great sponsor here, Artisan Grange. We've talked about them for a while now. These guys got a little CBD pouch, 5 milligrams, great flavors.
Which flavor is this?
This is the wintergreen. So if you're trying to come off dip or anything like that, you gotta have to cut. These are brand new cans. Artisan Grange help you out. Ooh, look at you with your knife. I've seen you sitting over there with that today.
I thought I might need it.
Artisan Grange is a company started when a group of former tobacco dippers wanted a dip alternative that actually tasted like tobacco. So they decided to make one on one condition. It supports American farmers. No matter what your taste, hemp dip satisfies without tobacco, nicotine, or fake fillers. Each pouch contains 5 milligrams of full spectrum CBD from the hemp. The community of hemp dippers who have switched from tobacco and other alternatives is a proud group of dippers who have pride in dipping as a simple pleasure again. One you can do because you want to, not because you have to, and supporting the American tradition of farm quality. So, thank you, Artisan Grange, for sending us some of this product. You gotten in there yet?
I can't get in.
What is? Man. You can tell you're from the West Coast over here in Texas.
The West Coast. The Southwest Coast.
It smells good. Smells like a wintergreen.
Do you get one?
Yeah, it tastes pretty good.
That's pretty. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, thank you, Artisan Grange, once again for supporting 6 Feet Under with Mark Calloway.
Thank you, Artisan Grange.
Well, I mean, for Sons of Anarchy, I mean, it falls into that category of, I love talking about Mount Rushmores. I mean, I think it falls
In
on
the
that
Rushmores?
Mount Rushmore of television shows that ever, I look at Sons of Anarchy and Sopranos. And it is funny as it sounds, I love Seinfeld. I think Seinfeld is a genius show.
Yeah,
and
it's a good one.
so it's like, I feel like Sons of Anarchy is one of those.
I think it's
one of
probably
those-
on a lot of people's Rushmores. Rushmore is interesting when people do it right. First of all, most people get it confused and think it's 5.
Yeah,
I think
it's
it's
You get
4.
4. You get
It's
4.
4.
We've,
You get
we've,
4.
Yeah, we've pound. I've tried to squeeze out an extra one here and there, but
Yeah.
It never
it
works.
never
out.
works. They never let me do it.
I always say like time period Rushmores and this and
Yeah.
that. My buddy, most of us do like wrestling Rushmores.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to do.
Yeah, but when it comes to TV shows, I mean, I think Sons of Anarchy it's hard to leave it off of one of the greatest shows of all
But
time.
then it's also like wrestling. It's like who has, like TV, it'd be like who has the impact, right? So like, obviously, going to wrestling, like Hogan has the impact, right? He changed the sport.
Yep.
So it's hard to leave him off of Rushmore. But then if you're going, we're talking technical wrestling, well then it's like, then
Yeah.
you're
Bret Hart and
right.
Shawn
And it's like,
and-
okay, so because I wouldn't have Bret on mine, but I'd have him on a technical one, right? But then if you're going technical, are you putting Ray on it? Mysterio? Like, then you're getting like, if you're talking real wrestling. So then it's the same thing with TV shows. What are we talking? Are we talking like heavy dramas? Because Seinfeld would be hard to exist on the same Rushmore as Sons.
yeah.
So it'd be like Sons, Sopranos, to me,
I like
The Wire.
Dexter. Do you like Dexter?
Yeah, it was a great show. The first.
See, I
like
never
it.
got
Yeah,
into The
good.
Wire.
The Wire?
I never got into
Oh,
it,
it's
and I
so
lived in
good.
Baltimore for 2 years, and
So
just
good.
never. Yeah, I lived it.
Yeah, it's
I
so
saw what was
good.
going on there. I was like, I definitely don't want to watch this on HBO.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It wouldn't work now. I think it's all too slow now for people. Just like I think Sons wouldn't work now. I don't think Sopranos would work now. I think it's all too slow.
Yeah.
We just talked about that. Everything's high spots now.
Yeah. The Sopranos is so good. I think that, no offense, I think it's the greatest show that was ever put
It
on
is the
television.
greatest
Yeah.
offense. It's definitely, it's no offense.
Do you kind of wish that you guys were on HBO though, to kind of be able to have the reins?
Well, we couldn't
off-
curse or anything. So, no, I don't. Listen, I'm a big believer. I think why everything is not, maybe I shouldn't watch my words. I think why everything is dog shit now is because there is no boundaries on anything. I think you do need you need to have like some kind of order in in movies. You need like a producer who goes, don't spend that much money, or hey, we're going to do this. It can't just be free for alls because then it doesn't make sense. So in Sons, I think by being contained by that FX model, it made us be more creative in other ways.
That's exactly what I was thinking while you were. Yeah.
You had to be
have
smart. You had to be
more-
smarter than just dropping a 4-letter word. You had to be a little bit more creative with your language.
Right.
Yeah.
And in
And
the
what-
writing of the scenes and all that. It just has to be more creative. And I think that goes for anything in life. I think that if there's a boundary in some way, you got to figure out a way, and it makes your brain get creative.
And leaving some mystery to the scene as well.
That's what I think that's really key. I always felt like the stuff that like Alfred Hitchcock did back in the day was more terrifying than all the slasher stuff
100%.
because the theater of the mind is always worse than the payoff. They give you they'd give you the machete shot and all of that. But Hitchcock, it was all theater of the mind.
Jaws.
Yeah, Jaws.
Yeah.
You're not seeing the shark, but you're terrified.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Again, it's making you do the work. That's what we used to call the parking lot walk in movies, like where you would talk with your friends after and go, what did you think about that? Oh, I think this happened. And I think that there's a mystery to it. And I think that, like you just said, the theater of the mind, it's like we get to kind of make our own assumptions, and that's what creates conversation. If it's all just out there, if it's all gore porn, if it's all just like chopping up, then it becomes numb to it.
Yeah.
You become numb to the violence. You become numb to all of it.
Flippy doos and wrestling.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's absolutely the same thing.
Because you're just expecting it, and there's nothing different. You're just constantly seeing somebody do 3 backflips off the top of the
How many
turnbuckle.
tables? How many tables can people go through? And then it goes, okay, I get it.
Now you got people in Buffalo that are tailgating with going through tables.
I see a normal dude on a Sunday doing that at a
lighting them like
tailgate.
on fire and like doing like they're trying, because now that it's gone so far where a chair shot doesn't mean anything.
Which used to be a very significant tool for a heel.
This is why I never liked when people kick out of people's finishers.
Preach, brother.
Come on.
This podcast is
It's
going
your
to.
finisher. Like, that's the whole point. No matter what it is. And it started when I was young.
Unbiased opinion.
This
it ain't
is not
just
coming
me.
from Taker.
It ain't just me.
It's true. Like, and it
It's a
started.
fan.
I forget who it was who kicked out of the. It was Warrior kicked out of the leg drop.
With Hogan, yes.
And I was a kid, and I'm like, I know that's the end. That's the end of the match. Like, that's the way it goes. He hits the big boot. He hits the leg. It's over. We get the 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. I've gone a couple of months without saying this, but one of the most frustrating things I ever watched was when Hogan kicked out of his tombstone.
100%.
And the first time they for the title, and he tombstones him, and he kicks out on one.
It's
like kick out on
not even 2.99.
Yeah, kick out. If you're gonna kick out, man, I'm telling you, let's cross those arms. Let's kick out on 2, because now you just the
or
fans
do an
go
interference.
crazy.
Or do something that
Something.
makes it that the person was going to be pinned.
Because no one else has ever kicked out of that.
Put a foot on the rope.
Yeah.
Do something that doesn't. Give me something that makes it know that he was out cold.
Yeah. There's a lot about that match.
And listen.
But I agree with you. I'm in that same boat with you.
But I think because most people in the world aren't thinking 10 steps down the road. And 10 steps down the road is, what are we starting here? Because if we do this, where is this going to go? And where it goes is, dropping 6,
I don't need
RKOs on someone to
well,
take
this whole
them
thing
out.
is like the RKO is supposed to
Take you out.
take you out. Why do we need to do 6 of them?
We
right?
don't.
I'd rather see this match to where like Randy is doing everything he can to get to that RKO, and he keeps getting stopped, and he's doing everything he can to get to it. I would rather see that all day long.
It also loses its momentum now. Now it's because the greatest thing about something like an RKO or a stunner or a diamond cutter is they come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or when Scott Hall was going to pull you up in that razor's edge, somehow it'd be awkward. Or if Christian was going to, I used to love Christian's finisher. I forget what it was called, where he would turn you around the back-to-back one. But it's like when you don't, oh my God, it's about to happen. It's about to happen. When he would spin someone and you're taking him on a tombstone, like you're waiting for that moment the whole time. If you do it, you've lost it now.
Yeah.
If it happens multiple times, who cares when it comes for the 6th time or the 5th time?
Yeah. Especially if it happens in like the first couple of minutes of match.
Yeah.
You know the guy's going to kick out.
I think what happened is that you got to the big matches, like in the WrestleManias, and you had 2 guys, and then in a particular match, when the time was right, you let somebody kick. Now, for years, I had so much equity built up in my finish, nobody kicked out of my finish. And then when I finally let, maybe Sean, there was a couple.
Yeah.
But then what happened, I think the people that are, the wrestlers coming up watching were like, oh man, what a pop that gets when you kick out of their finish. And now everybody's finish is bastardized, and now it's commonplace. They do it all the time.
But when Sean kicked out, there's 20 years worth of equity built up into that
what I'm
kick out.
saying.
You know what I'm saying?
That's what I'm saying.
It's also WrestleMania. Maybe if we're going to do it, save it for certain.
And that was the deal.
Yeah.
That was the thing. But they puts in the younger guys' minds like, that gets a hell of a pop. That's the thing. So now nobody's finish means anything.
Yeah.
It's just like it is. Everything's a high
And
spot.
you talk about protecting that finish so much,
Yeah.
and it is frustrating when you see people are kicking out of their finishers.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one. I think again, what has changed so much, because it's so similar. Wrestling and Hollywood is so incredibly similar, and we just talked about the mixing in of MMA too, when we were talking about it. I think that the appreciation for the mystery and the art of it has kind of gone. When you see, okay, so for example, and I'll age myself, it's like I would watch actors on Johnny Carson or something, and I'd be like, oh my God, I didn't know they had an accent. Or, oh man, I didn't know they lived there. I didn't know, wow, that's fascinating, right? Because that's the only time I'm seeing them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So their characters were protected because I didn't know that Bruce Willis played in a band until I see it, because I'm thinking of John McClane or Pulp Fiction or whatever. So I'm getting a little morsel of his life. Now I know everything about everyone's life. So why would I believe you on screen? I don't believe you if I know what kind of gas you put in your car.
If I know what kind of gas you put in your car.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, that is the best statement ever, because people film everything.
They film everything. And I know now everything about you. So I don't believe you.
You're eating kale salad for dinner, and now you're supposed to be this like bad, big, mean dude. God. Come on now.
Matt, let's just set out. Preach. Come on.
We'll pass the urn around. This is our offering.
We're just going to set out, and you just...
But that's the biggest fight of my career. My biggest fight now is that we've opened up to all high spots going in every way, meaning like, okay, now if you don't have a presence where you become a brand, which has got to be the worst word. I mean, give me a chair shot when I hear people say that. But it's like when you become a brand, right? Now you've taken away anything to do with playing pretend. I'm a court jester. I play pretend. You're not supposed to know anything about me.
Yeah.
You're supposed to believe me as Juice Shades, in the current show Penguin, Dr. Rush. You're supposed to believe me as someone else. But if you know all about my life, if you hear me talk all the time, now you have an opinion. And your opinion's going to bleed into when you see me. And then people go, well, that's not true if you're good enough. No, it's not true, because the second they know something, it's gone. And this is, again, the whole cave. I got to tell you,
just crack a beer. Just sit beside your dad and just sit back and have yourself.
This absolutely right now is the best interview we have done.
Because I think about it all the time, because you're not so for me, I'm so hell-bent on like protecting like these things that I'm trying, because it's hard enough to make people believe you. Especially for me, I'm trying to always look different. I'm trying to talk different. I'm trying to be different, lose weight, gain weight, do this. Just trying to be different in these projects I'm doing. Why would you want to know, like, who cares what I eat? Who cares what this?
I'm going to bring up Sopranos again because of James Gandolfini, right? Like, people that have, now found out about him, I mean, he was very much he would play hacky sack and stuff, on set and everything, right? Like, he was just this laid back type of, I would call him a hippie, but he was just
he was an artist.
Yeah, he was an artist. Wore Birkenstocks and all that stuff, right? If you knew that about him while watching Sopranos as a viewer, it's really hard to believe Tony Soprano.
If you knew anything about him.
Yeah.
This is the difference. We didn't know anything about Spencer Tracy unless somebody said, or Cary Grant, or we just didn't know unless what they gave us.
Yeah.
And then that's why the book 20 years later, or the documentary, is so good, because you're learning things you didn't know.
Yeah.
But if you know everything now, that book doesn't mean anything.
And you probably are like me too. I love learning about wrestlers from the 80s and 90s and stuff that I grew up watching that I love. And then all of a sudden you learn a little bit about their personal life. And I'm like, oh, that's very interesting. But then it's all of a sudden you're like, oh, crap.
If I knew what I knew, like I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, I was nuts. Wrestlers were my superheroes, because I wasn't really into, I read comics and stuff, but it was me going into Walden Books, this bookstore in the mall, and I would like read wrestling, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and I would literally, and I was obsessed with like Abdul the Butcher, for example, like, because I had never seen, like, here's this guy fighting with forks and bloody and has all the marks on his head, and I was like, this is the craziest thing I'd ever seen. I don't even know how old I was, 6, 7, 8, or whatever. I just thought it was, there was never that much blood. And I'm only seeing it in black and white because I'm on the East Coast, so I don't get any of that footage. I'm getting Bruno Sammartino and Bob Backlund. I'm not getting that. I'm only getting it through black and white footage in a magazine. He was terrifying. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was so fascinating if I knew everything about him that I know now, it's not as terrifying.
Yeah.
It's not, that's lost. That magic of that is lost. Mil Mascaris was a guy, like if I'm seeing the guy without the mask and I'm knowing that he's a regular guy, these are all guys that I didn't know anything about them until I was later in life. If I saw them on someone's podcast or somebody was shooting on them on a YouTube channel or something, I didn't know about them. I think that's the same for acting. I think it's the same for athletes. You've chosen to be in a profession of entertainment, of court gesturing. So I always say, I don't exist. I, Theo, don't exist as a person. I exist as Theo the dad when I'm around my kids, Theo the husband when I'm with my wife. I'm always someone else. I'm rooted in nothing because I don't exist. I'm in the moment that I'm in. So I have no opinions on anything. It makes people go nuts when they ask me something. I have no opinions on anything because I just go, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I say. I don't care. Because ultimately, my opinion doesn't matter on it anyway because I'm trying to hide out from them anyway. I don't even want to be in the conversation, so don't ask me anyway.
You're literally the same exact person.
It doesn't matter. Don't ask me because I don't even want to be here.
That's great.
But the thing is, I think
Greatest day ever.
I think that people probably
Y'all could live beside each other and never see each other.
Yeah,
And we would be best friends.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah, that's it. Because I think, honestly, I think I'm fortunate. I think that when you get recognition, and you know this, I think when people know who you are, and I think there's recognition, it maybe satiates something, or you go through it in the beginning, it's cool, right? Oh, this is cool. And then it just is. And I think for people who've never had that, there's always that searching for it.
Yeah.
And maybe in that searching for it, that's why they do so many silly things or something. I don't know.
Especially on social media, which is allowing them to just do stupid
ego.
stuff. Yeah.
You want people to say you're great, but with greatness comes hate.
Yeah.
It's usually 50-50, right? If people love you, people hate you.
Yep.
So you got to be okay with both. And that's a whole nother bag of tricks that your brain's going to play through the process of this. I've been doing this 24 years. People are going to tell you they think hate you, your face is punchable, you're the worst, you're this, and then they're going to also tell you you're the greatest. And none of them mean anything. They're great either way because you've decided to do something that is subjective by the person who watches it.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's why for me, it's like my opinion means nothing on anything. I don't care. And by the way, it might change tomorrow. I don't care. I don't care.
So speaking of like recognition and stuff like that, I don't know if you watched this show, True Story.
Yeah.
That was on Netflix. It was with Kevin Hart that he played in. And that I feel like the show didn't get the recognition that it deserves, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know, when I found the show not that long ago, and I watched it. But it goes back to that whole like, in the show he plays a fan,
a psycho fan.
Yeah, the psycho fan of Kevin Hart, and Kevin Hart is essentially playing himself. It feels like, you know, in the show, and he's a comedian.
It's like an entourage version of himself.
It's an entourage. Yeah, and he's this big comedian that, you know. And Theo plays a character. What was your character's name?
Behind the scenes, Gene.
Behind the scenes, Gene. Right.
Yeah.
So Gene has one bad altercation with Kevin. Kevin's having a bad day.
He spazzes out.
Yeah. But Gene ends up having, I won't ruin it for anybody. He has some important information about Kevin or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, that Gene wants to be recognized.
Oh, yeah.
And Gene's never been recognized.
No.
He's a little awkward.
Awkward.
He doesn't know how to.
He's got a lot
social
going on,
cues.
yeah.
You know,
no social cues.
Social cues. Just got, you know, and he's a fan. He's a fanboy to the extreme, right?
Yeah.
And he just wants to be recognized. And all of a sudden, he finally gets recognized. Have you? I mean, I imagine you've experienced a Gene in your
I based
life.
it on a few different people that I've had experiences with like that. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I'm a person who's very aware of everything. I think, I don't know what it is. Maybe, I don't know. It's a blessing and a curse. I see everything. I'm like always looking. I'm always checking things out. I'm always like, if I'm out, I'm like looking at everything because I think I'm just aware. Like, you're just aware when someone knows it's you and you're this, they're staring at you, they're this or whatever. And I just think what's interesting is if you're with your wife and kids, for example, there's an absurdity of the way like they'll, like how no one else means anything. It's just you. They'll push your wife and kids. It's just you. And it's fine because you understand that they're being almost taken hostage by like their excitement. And it's so when I was playing Gene, it was easy because I've watched people like all decorum like goes out of the way. They just so like, can I get a picture? Like they're like there, and it's fascinating because I've watched it. And forget me, I mean, I can imagine him, or like when I'm around Charlie Hunnam, who played Jax, or when I was with I was in Rome in Venice with Spike Lee, and I'm like, watch, like it's all social conduct goes out the window because that's when the ego really kicks in for that fan, because they think I'm never going to get this opportunity again in my life, and I have to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fine. It's great. But so Gene was easier for me to get to because I think because of something like Sons and Luke Cage and those shows that had that really like heavy duty fan base. Because there's a lot of people that are on shows that, you wouldn't, know them if they were fixing your sink.
Yeah.
It's not a knock to them. It's just they're not certain shows like certain wrestlers they have a thing that just brings out a different level of fans. Sons was one of those. The Marvel stuff is one of those. Penguin's one of those. It brings out a very different level. So Gene was like one of those. And it was easier to get to because nothing else matters. It's just that thing.
Yeah.
And so that was a really fun one. Yeah. That was crazy, that show.
That's a good show.
It's a good show.
Wild twist.
Violent.
Very violent.
Very violent.
Yeah. Very violent.
Yeah, I was surprised too that I think it was because we did it during COVID. I don't know what. So I thought with Kevin it was the creators of Narcos. I thought it was going to be like a thing.
Yeah.
You never know. You never know in anything. You never know what's going to catch a wave and what's not. You surf the cloud when it's there, and you don't when it doesn't. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant.
So tell us about the Penguin.
Yeah, it's cool. Listen, my buddy called me up. He had seen this film that I did that everybody fell in love with, this film, Emily the Criminal, that we had debuted at Sundance and did really, really, really well. For me, it's probably the biggest change in my career since Sons. Like, it was Sons, and then I feel like it was Emily. Emily, like, did something with the industry, like, critically, and it had the industry, like, in a chokehold. They just loved it. So my buddy Craig Zobel, who was the director of the first three, executive producer, part of it with Matt Reeves, who created the Batman, the new version of the Batman, they called me up and he was like, "You want to do the show? I can only tell you this much." And because I'm such a giant fan of Craig as a filmmaker, he did this show, Mayor of Easttown, and a couple other these indies that I love. I was like, "Yeah, sure, of course. You don't even need to tell me anything. I'll just do it." And it's good. It's a whole different world. I like smaller stuff like Emily the Criminal. I like indies. I like we just finished this one called Come With Me that are, they're smaller budget, they're more family oriented, they're more, meaning like everyone on it is my crew, and it's like we doing these like action thrillers, like dark, whatever, but it's more, those are much bigger machines, like Army of the Dead and Penguin and Luke Cage. Those are bigger studio things. Like I have this movie coming out in December called Carry On with me and Jason Bateman and Taron Egerton on Netflix, and it's this giant, like big action, huge, film. And it's like, those are great, but they're a machine. Yeah. There's so many people in the crews. There's so many things, and you have to do those to do these. You have to do both.
Yeah.
that feeds your ability to produce and make these, the ones that I love doing. Then I'm going to go do another one in a month. It's like the smaller, more like, I'm a big fan of like Bad Lieutenant and Thief and, you know, the smaller films like Reservoir Dogs, and those are all small films.
And Vault,
Great movie.
Vault
Vault was
a
they're in
great. I
Providence,
love that.
Yeah.
Did you ever see that movie, Vault?
Yeah, those are smaller
That's
things. I like smaller films because they're more story. You know, listen, it's like anything. I think, and wrestling's a great example. It's like I think that once things get to a big scale, more people get involved, which is unfortunate. And then because when there's more people, there's more opinions. And then when there's more money involved, there's more risk, which means everybody tries to contain it more. And the thing that got them there, they start to kind of lose. And I think that that's happening as things get more corporatized. And again, I'm a dummy. My opinion means nothing. But it's like, I think that what I've seen is as things get more on a business level, they lose like a certain love for kind of what got them there, the purity of the thing. Whether it be in wrestling, it's like this certain person and the passion kind of goes away.
Did you see that in wrestling where maybe a guy came from the indies that was like killing it, comes to WWE, gets a little bit of a paycheck, and
Oh yeah, man, yeah. Because the guys in the indies they're grinders, man. They're putting in miles. They're not making any money, putting their health on the line. That's the one thing about indies and being at the show is the bumps all hurt the same and takes the same toll. So yeah, once you start getting a little coin in the pocket, it's just like that motivation level will go down on some guys. Some always keep a chip on it, like Punk's always kept a chip on his shoulder and from coming from that, and he's always stayed hungry.
But don't you feel like you did too? Like if you go back to your stuff, like we were just talking about with Bruiser Brody, I mean, that's incredible, right? You're wrestling Brody, you're young, and you're doing, that's not the Big Red days. That is...
Texas Red.
That's
yeah.
Texas Red,
Texas
okay.
Red.
Right.
With
So-
a black mask.
with a black mask.
How different is that? Like the way you were feeling, your mindset, from an outsider, it doesn't seem like your mindset changed. You always wanted to be the best. You wanted to be at the top no matter what. But you could see that some people probably would forget that once the money and the miles and all that stuff starts to come in.
Absolutely. That happens quite a bit. People forget where they come from, and that's something that I preach to people all the time: is never forget where never be content. If you want to be the best, you can never be content with where you're at. There's always, like I always had, there was always Austin. During my run, Austin was his name was always at the top of the page, and so everybody else that was underneath Austin all wanted Austin's spot. Whether you got it or you didn't get it, that was the spot that you wanted.
Right.
And even then, when those guys left, then when it was me, then I was like, okay, there's a bunch of guys that are nipping at my toes here. Like, do I? And I've never been one to rest on my laurels, or this is I've done all this. It doesn't matter. It's what you're doing. It's what you're doing right now, and that just I've just always found ways to stay motivated, but I always remembered the pre-match before the Brody. I remembered living in my car, and I remembered not eating, and I remembered all those things. And I always use those things, like all that could all come back in a heartbeat.
Yep.
You never know what's going to happen, and so.
And you didn't lose the love of the game. Like I think a lot of people, I see it. When I'll go do a movie, I'll see somebody come on, and it's almost like I have to remind them sometimes. I'm like, hey man, look what we're doing here. Like this was your dream at one point. You wanted to be here. I get it, man. I know you've been 40 years in the game, 30 years in the game, or even someone new who had, massive success. I'm like, but don't forget that you would sit here and dream about this moment. And I think that if you never lose the love of the game, it doesn't mean it's not going to get frustrated. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be angry. But if you don't lose that love of it, that thing that got you there, and that's what I try to do. Like I just can't. I remember me looking up and seeing like certain, watching Taxi Driver or watching Goodfellas and being like, how does he do that? Or watching Pacino in Godfather and being like, this is crazy. Like, how is this guy, why I'm so captivated. And the fact that I could even exist in that same world makes me want to work like 1,000 times harder than everyone. And I think that most people that I've seen, and this is only my experience, is when they get success or then other things start to come into play and they lose kind of the vigor for the whole thing. It becomes...
I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
It just becomes something else.
Yeah.
And it's fine. It is, but once you start losing it, the eyes never lie. Once you start losing it, everyone can tell. And if you're in the audience business, the audience could tell when you lose it. The audience could tell you don't care. They see it, and they could tell when you do care. And then also it does become addictive like a drug, right? In any business, like when you hit, I know I'll never have my time on Sons the way we were, the family atmosphere, the vacations, the thing we were doing for 8 years, all close as friends. I'm never going to have that again. Doesn't mean I don't think about it all the time.
Yeah.
It just won't exist anymore because the world that was in doesn't exist anymore. So that becomes addictive because then you start thinking about that. I spent time with Flair, a bunch, and Rick's like, that guy.
Flair is Flair, man.
Flair is Flair. There's nothing like him.
There is no turnoff switch there.
No,
it's incredible.
No emergency shutoff. That's just there.
there's no shut.
There's no shut. But again, if I think about me growing up and seeing Rick in those robes and his spots and him with Dusty and like all the way he was, I can imagine like talk about playing the gimmick. Like that's how do you. That's the greatest.
It's not a gimmick.
It's not a gimmick.
It's not a gimmick. No, that he is.
That's
he
him.
Is, yeah, that is him. He has turned into the gimmick, and
he's turned into the gimmick,
and he's still living it, and that's the way.
For better or for worse, it's been.
But for worse, for who? For him, it's fine.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like for him, regardless of, I always look at it like, it's like an actor who wants to die on stage. Like that's your thing. And I don't judge anybody for anything because they are them. But all I know is that dude, when I'm around him and I see how people react to him, and I'm just like, wow. Like he's most people's Rushmore.
Oh, yeah. I always say on the Mount Rushmore for wrestling, there's really only 3 spots. Because Flair takes up the first one.
100%.
Yeah. You only get 3.
And he was doing those 60-minute matches and stuff.
Yeah.
Iron Man.
And drinking all night long. Carrying on all night long, and then doing an hour Broadway every night because he was a champ. He was a heel champion.
And it's the same thing in movies. You had, those guys back in the day on Easy Ride, they're doing drugs all night, partying all day, going straight to set and making these classic films. And you're like, how are these guys? Different time, different era. You watch the documentary Heart of Darkness on Apocalypse Now, it's insane. These guys were insane. And they're making these incredible projects because they were built different. It was a different time, a different whatever, but there was a passion on both ends.
Yeah.
There was a passion in the chaos and there was a passion in the art. And I think that, I'm not saying that that's the answer because there were a lot of guys who didn't do that who were also killing it, but there is a certain sauce in that I don't think Rick's Rick without being Rick.
Yep. No. Very well said.
Yeah. He's got to be Rick in and out of the ring, right?
Yeah.
At all times, right? And
I grew up in Staten Island, and Macho Man used to live right down the block from me, which was wild because I go to the mall and him and Elizabeth would be in the mall, and he's always in the gimmick. Like I would see him, and as a kid, remember, I'm 9 years old, and I'm seeing him in the Staten Island Mall, and I'm losing my mind.
Yo, come here.
Right?
Yeah, I see you looking at Elizabeth.
And you're losing your mind and going, and again, I don't know anything that I know now about Mach. Like what I know now, I didn't know then. All I knew was that's the guy with the purple trunks and the stars, and that's him, and that's the guy, and this is insane. And again, back in the cave, he's keeping it all up.
oh yeah.
Well, it wasn't until I saw that thing on the cover of the New York, I think it was the Daily News. It was Sheik and Hacksaw. That was, as a kid, that was Santa Claus.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because I'm a kid, and that's on my on the newspaper stand, like sitting there, and I'm like, I don't understand.
That's
what's
not
happening.
true. That's not true.
That's
That's
not,
not.
that I go, I don't understand.
Yeah, I think it was all made up anyway. I think that whole thing was made up. I don't think it was real. I don't think they were riding the same car.
I didn't even care about the other stuff. I'm going, why are they in a car together?
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't understand why they were together.
Yeah,
They're not supposed to be together.
They're not supposed. They're arch enemies. You know,
Yeah.
they're supposed to be wrestling tonight.
They're supposed to be wrestling. They're not supposed to be together.
Yeah.
So that, again, that's that art of the sleight of hand, the Houdini stuff that started to go away, and everything just.
And that's where it's like, I don't want to open up social media and see these wrestlers on vacation together that are supposed to be arch enemies. You know, that just last week they were in a cage match together. You know what I mean?
And I felt like, for me, even when I came back into it, because I was gone for a couple of years, even when I came back into it for the Attitude Era, and again, I'll be honest, what brought me back in was when WCW started going, the Outsiders came. It's kind of what brought a lot of people in, and I came back as, you know, still relatively young, and I came back to it, and then, even then, I felt like it was still very protected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I did not know that wasn't Scott Hall. Like, I did not know.
That was Razor Ramon and Diesel
that was
there.
him. They were there. I didn't understand what was happening, and hence why the ratings went through the roof. It was still protected, and here I am in my 20s thinking, oh my God, these guys are really doing this?
Yeah.
This is insane.
Yeah.
If I would have saw them on vacation with Triple H and Shawn, like in pictures on their social media, I wouldn't have believed that any
Well,
of
they
them.
kind of did.
Right.
And then they left. And then they left. But no, it is. There is a huge disconnect for me, even being in the business. There's so much, and I try to tell guys this all the time. Like, you're trying to be this character. You're trying to be this individual, and then you go and go on social media, and you're bouncing around acting like an idiot.
Yeah.
I'm just like, dude, how is anybody supposed to take you seriously?
I told
This
the
is
guy,
what pays the bill. This is
Yeah.
what you are. This is what you're trying to be, and you're not there yet.
You know who does it the best? Liv Morgan. She, and the balancing of the social media and everything. You go on her social media, she's wearing Dom shirts.
Yeah.
She's posting about how
Yep.
much she loves Dom.
Dom thing is crazy.
All that stuff. I mean, she is on her social media. She's using her social media to
Stay in character.
stay in character,
It's
in
a
my
great
opinion.
tool
It's a great tool.
if you do it the right way.
and
I watched,
feel like she's
I
probably
watched MJF do it at Comic Cons. Like, he stays in. Like, when I was there,
He's
I
always
watched
in
him.
character.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
watched him do it, and I was really impressed. I watched Sting do it. Sting, we have the same booking agent, and Sting would show up full makeup, you know, full whatever, full character, never out of it. It's like, I appreciate it so much. Even one of the older guys I see all the time, I see Slaughter, and he's bananas, and I see Slaughter's always in doing the thing, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, when on my last film, I told the actor who was playing, and we hated, like, I despised them in the film, and for good reason, and what was coming throughout the film. And I told him before, you know, because this was a film I was producing as well. I just told him, I said, hey man, it's great to meet you. I said, I'm a big fan. I'm not going to be talking to you for the next month. I said, but it's really nice to see you. I said, but when we're out of this,
We're
great.
good.
But I said, it's just the way I work. I said, it's not anything against you. I
That
said,
is
you're
awesome.
wonderful and I'm a big fan. But we have no reason to be in any
Right.
type of social conversation, because I don't want to know about your kids, and I don't want to feel bad, and I don't want to, like, I just don't want to do that. Again, that's just me. People might think it's insane, and I'm okay with that.
That's okay. Did he appreciate that, or
He
did
loved
he
it.
understood? Yeah, yeah. I
And
think
it's
so.
the best performance we both ever had.
Do you feel like you have to get back in character when you go to those Comic-Cons as well? Like, if you're going as Juice?
No, because I go and it's for a million things. Like, they come up for the most random stuff, and
Yeah.
my thing is I at them. I'll be at one this weekend in San Antonio. It's like I know that most likely they're never going to meet me again. Most likely, and that's their one moment. So I just want to be the best version of myself, which is just like, usually just like, they know, like, I'm like, I don't give a fuck. And like,
Yeah.
I don't care. Like, I'm not trying to be anybody but who I am. So it's like, just making their experience great, whatever it is, hearing their story, listening to what they want. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Because you hear the greatest things from them of like, you know, some of the greatest things you could hear is like their parent who passed, them used to watch the show together and that was their thing. And you're like, oh my God, or they have a tattoo of you or of your name or a picture of you on them. And it's just like, wow. So it's like, I just make sure that I'm giving myself as much as I can in that moment, but they're so fast.
They're so fast. It's hard to create moments.
Yeah, it's so fast. The photos are like boom, 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 boom. And you're just trying to be the best version for them in the thing.
Yeah.
You do a good job of that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And it is that because they're going to get one opportunity, and it's like a factory.
belt.
Yeah, it's a conveyor belt.
Yeah.
And you
Try
look at
to
your
make
Dead Man shows. You sell the VIP tickets where people can do the meet and greet before the show.
Mm-hmm.
You could literally sell 1,000 of those if you wanted to, but you sell 100 of them if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And a lot of that is for the fact that like you want to be able to spend a little bit of quality time with every single person.
Yeah, I want it to be a special. Yeah, I don't want to be hey don't boom. Yeah, hey no.
Yeah,
like,
let me just sign this. And
usually the people that come to those have something they want to share with me.
And want to tell you and something about that's meaningful. And that's why these are important because believe me, I was at a moment for a while where I was like, I don't want to talk to anybody ever again because I just want to hide out and I don't want to talk to people and I don't want to do whatever. But then I started to realize that it is important because there's a connection to people that it makes them feel like they're sitting right there and that they're hearing you talk and they're hearing parts of things. And like, if you're not some automated idiot who doesn't know how to have a conversation and doesn't know how to speak about things and it's like literally just there to promote and has, you know, the personality of like of your flip-flops. It's like, you know, then it's like, you don't...
A lot of personality.
Yeah, definitely.
I apologize.
But it's like the people who are watching get to feel a certain thing. And I think that that's so important, especially in your case. It's like you were a mystery to people for 30. They didn't know anything. So it wasn't until the doc or like they get to see in for a moment. And then they're like, oh my God, I want to know more. And I think that's why it is important for that part of it. But, you know, it's like, I don't know. It's a big push and pull. It's a struggle.
You got to be judicious with your. I'm gonna go out for a little bit, but I need to come back.
Yeah, I got to come back and hide out.
I can hide a little more.
I just got to be with the dogs and like just hide out.
But I mean, if you're out there constantly, you start losing a little bit of that value as well. You know what I mean?
Nothing.
Yeah, you just start watering yourself down if you're just in front of people constantly.
Jack Nicholson used to say, it's the detriment. It'll ruin your career.
Yeah.
The more you're out there, you never saw Jack. He was at the Laker game and he never did late night talk show. You never saw him anywhere.
Bill
except
Murray.
on screen, Bill Murray.
Yeah.
You just don't, Denzel, you don't really see anywhere, ever.
Yeah.
You just don't see it. You don't see Leo anywhere.
And then when they are out and you
want to see him
and you hear them talk, you listen.
That's right.
Yeah, which is pretty neat.
You just don't, but again, that's a protection of, you're going to see me on this 25-foot screen, you know, or whatever it is. You're going to be intrigued because I'm being someone different than who you get.
Well, before we wrap this up, I'm going to let you be a fan.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
I have a bunch of questions.
Fire away at the man.
Okay, ready?
Go ahead.
So, obviously, who makes like the decisions? Do you have to build up the cachet to have any input into like basically the arc of the story of what's going on? Like, at what point do you get to say, I'm not going to do that?
Yeah. So there's been a changeover, right? So Vince is out of the situation now, but yeah, you used to have to earn Vince's trust to be able to either put the kibosh on something like, no, I'm not going to do that. I think, that's what we need. That's what we're going to do. So you have to earn that
and if
trust.
he said that's what you're going to do,
that's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Either you do that or you say no, and then whatever the consequences of that is, right? So with Vince, once he trusts you and understands that you understand the vision, then he was much more he was much more receptive to your input. I'm not around as much, but from the general consensus that I get from what's going on now, Triple H, Paul, he's more receptive to input from the talent and their perspective on things.
Does that go for as well as like taking a fall in matches or turning over the title or like the way it's going to go?
Yeah. I mean, from that aspect, I think once that decision is made, it takes a pretty big argument because of how they have to book. They have to like they have to look, they'll book out to like WrestleMania and then they book backwards. So the vision, the overall vision, I mean, obviously the path can take different roads, but when you're talking about titles and things like that, that usually is once that decision is made, it very rarely changes.
But in the gimmick, it's always been a version of the original gimmick that DiBiase, when you first came out, it's always been, I'm talking since the Taker character, but then the American Badass, and then like the way it's coming, did you have input in that?
All that. The whole American Badass thing was mine.
Cool.
And there was two reasons why I did it. One, I was starting to feel a little stale. And two, I was, as great as the gimmick was and the character was, I was confined to what I could do to be true to the character, which was always the most important thing to me, was be true to that character and represent it the way people saw it. The Attitude Era comes along, and you have Stone Cold cutting these crazy promos, The Rock cutting everybody's cutting all these cutting edge promos, and it just didn't work. It didn't work for that original Undertaker version. So I needed to shift a little bit. I kept some elements, but then you get a little bit more of Mark Calloway with the American Badass, a hyped up version, because I've always rode bikes and I've always kind of been in that culture. So now I don't have any, I'm free. I can cut the same promos. I can tell Rock that I'm going to, I think one of my favorite ones, I said I was going to stick my boot so far down his throat he'd be able to kick his own ass or something like that. But I couldn't do that as the Undertaker, right? No. I can only as the American Badass could I say things like that. So it helped me stay relevant in
and
that
you
era.
Proposed that, and they were cool with it. Creative was cool with it.
Everybody was cool with it, and I always had the vision that I would go back.
Well, what's funny is I think if that doesn't, from a fan perspective, if the American Badass doesn't exist, we don't get that 2.0 version of the Dead Man. It's kind of like a hybrid. It's a different.
Right.
It's not the original. It's kind of.
Yeah, it is a hybrid. It was a hybrid version. So now, I mean, every iteration that I kind of turned or moved into, I kept elements and brought them along with me, but continued to try and evolve the character. Like, so the Undertaker 2.0, there was, even, I guess it started with American Badass. And that's when I really kind of started incorporating a lot of jiu-jitsu and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just because I'm keeping an eye, because I was always a mixed martial arts fan and a boxing fan. So now I'm watching our product and I'm like, okay, well, this doesn't really work as well as maybe as if I got somebody and I got an arm bar 'em, or I've got a triangle choke on somebody, because UFC was like, they were growing so fast
and
there
Kurt
were so
and Shamrock had been in at
absolutely
the time.
Right, so it just made sense. And then now you go back and I've got all the dark, sinister characteristics, but I'm able to incorporate a different kind of style, and it was just able to continue to evolve it, because wrestling fans can get real flavor of the week. I mean,
I know. I was one of them. I could see, once you turn one thing, it becomes like dire for something. You just are like, wait, I don't understand what's happening here.
Yeah.
And that's the same with like the last ride, and like there were certain things that started to get like you would amplify certain things, like the tombstone was amplified, the walking on the ropes kind of became a thing. You're amplifying. Are you seeing what works or what your body can do, and then getting rid of certain things?
Well, at the end, yeah, it was like, I was piecemealing. What I could physically do.
Yeah.
Like my mind's eye could see, and my heart could see, but my body was just ravaged. There was just like no way that I could, and I was trying to give everything that I had.
Yeah.
I didn't want to mail anything in, but I had to figure out what I could do and do well. And you're right, like there's just certain things that I had to cut out just because I didn't do it well enough.
It's like young guys who put up these crazy finishers. It's like, are you going to be able to do that finisher in 10 years?
Yeah, no, exactly.
That doesn't look like a 30-year career.
No, I will tell you, like when I was in WCW, Jody Hamilton, he was, he ran what we call the gorilla position, the area right before we go out, and that's back when I would walk down the ropes. I would tightrope, and then I'd jump off. I'd jump off and drop the savage elbow off the rope. And I remember coming back once and already kind of limping. And I'm in my 20s at this point, and I'm limping. And Jody, I never forget coming back through the curtain. He's got his glasses sitting on the tip of his nose, and he says, "That finish is taking years off your career, kid." And I was like, no, sorry, Mr. Hamilton, I'll be able to do this forever. And I walked with a prominent limp by the time I got to in 1990 when I got to WWF. I was already limping because of dropping. I mean, it just wasn't the smartest thing to do.
As a kid, I mean, you throw somebody in a torture rack, you realize how hard it is to get someone up who's heavy, right? But you can put someone in a figure four all day. So it's like you got to start to think about
that sharpshooter looked like a pretty good finisher.
Like a great idea. Even the stunner, I guess you're hitting on the backbone, but it's like you start to. I would imagine. When you're filled with piss and vinegar, you're not thinking any of that.
No, you don't think down the road.
No.
You live in the moment, right?
Just even your tombstone. I mean, do you feel like you'd have two new knees if that was not your
Probably
finisher?
Not. I'd probably still have my original knees.
Yeah.
Just from dropping all in that weight.
Yeah. I mean,
Mark Henry.
Mark Henry was, he was a load, man.
He's a big, that's all muscle. That's a big dude.
He was 400 pounds when I tombstoned him. And that was,
I mean the torque, the whole thing, just night after night, right? Because that's his last question on that. So you're also at house shows and stuff like that. As you get down the road, you're not doing as many of those. You're really just doing pay-per-views.
I had about an 8-year stretch where I averaged 200 dates a year.
Wow.
On the road, over 200 dates. So when I finally had that sweat and blood equity built up, I was like, you're going to have to ease up on my schedule. And it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to. It was just physically, I knew like I wanted to last a little longer, and I was just so beat up. And I wasn't doing myself any favors too, because I burnt the midnight oil too. So I wasn't doing the things. I mean, I take much better care of myself now than I did then. Because again, like I had an S on my chest. There was nothing that could hurt me. But finally, I'd built up enough sweat and blood equity that he's like, "Yeah, I'd like for you to stay around for a while." So. And
then that means it's TV and pay-per-views.
TVs and pay-per-views I did that for a short period of time. But even Vince came to me and it was like, "Man, I need you on some of these house shows." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not. You know what?"
And then once it went international, that's also a major toll.
Yeah,
the international tours were
because that goes a whole nother.
Yeah.
We
go 17 days. We go 17 days in a row, different city, different country every day. It was crazy the workload there, and.
Because even UFC, like if they're booking in certain territories, it's usually all the fighters in that area they'll do. It's very rare that a person will fly over. Some do, but it's rare.
I mean, you think about going and Saudi Arabia's a whole nother beast now because of the time that you guys are actually wrestling and just the heat, and it's outside and everything
and the travel
else.
and all that.
Yeah. And I mean, the time zones, just everything's so much different. And I just feel like Saudi especially is.
The schedules now are so much better, which I'm glad, because it's going to keep the athletes, it's going to keep them healthier and more motivated and more, because it isn't that kind of workload. I'm sure they feel like, they're pretty slammed, but it's not anything compared to what it used to be. And the way we did it, I mean, it wasn't smart the way they booked us. It was just a cattle drive, and we had so many injuries, and and then too, we didn't have the medical staff and all of that either. I mean, everything has evolved to where it is now for a reason.
That's why I go back to like that Butcher stuff and like Superstar Billy Graham and like what those guys were doing, and Dusty, and like back then you're talking about hanging on by life and limb at that point with the way they're doing it. It's all just a wing and a prayer at all times.
You talk about the trainer was just the dude that had a roll of tape in his bag.
Yeah, somebody had a roll of tape. Hey, dude, can I borrow that? My finger is broken. Can I wrap my their up? Yeah, man, don't use too much. All right, it's the only roll I got.
Fascinating, and yet we look back on that as there's always the beginnings, right, of the circus, and in acting and in wrestling, it's the beginnings of it, and there's elements of it that you kind of love, and then you also just kind of take that 10,000-foot view and go, thank God it's not like that anymore.
That's absolutely.
But it creates legends.
It does, and initially, like, I'm always like, oh man, and I've said it, and I've gotten in trouble for it, but I was like, oh man, these guys are soft today, and they don't know what it's like to work, and like, you know what? It's good.
It's good.
It is good, because it's better. They're smarter. They take better care of themselves. They're treated better.
Yeah.
So the fact that I was in that era that kind of laid the groundwork for where they're at now it's another rewarding aspect of my career, because these guys are treated really well now, and they're treated just like NFL players and Major League Baseball and NBA.
Yeah.
It's not the sideshow circus that it used to be. It's a.
Well, you're one of the only connectors. It's like a connector to that old, like that style, the old world style of the territory days, and like the way it was run, and the certain competition, the way the wrestling business was kind of how it became to what it is now. There's very few that have seen both, if any,
and been really part of,
and be at the top of the game the entire time.
Yeah, all the way across the board.
That's the big difference. I mean, this is just me telling you, which is so crazy. I can't think of anyone, and I don't think there is anyone that's been at the absolute top the whole time. From once that character came, it was from then on in, and that's such a rarity to do that in anything, because what I preach to every young actor that I try to mentor and help is like stamina, not just in your life, but stamina in your career. You have to be ready to go. This is a long game.
Yeah.
This is why you can never get too high and never get too low, because it's a long game.
Yeah.
And I think that very few have done that in the business, where they just last at the top for so long, and that's major accomplishment. Patience.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I consider myself very blessed, and I can only imagine if I'd have taken care of myself. I still may be working. I don't know. I'd have done a little less partying and a few less tombstones. I still might be going.
No, but then it wouldn't be what it was.
The stories wouldn't be as fun.
No, the story. Well, yeah, I did it. No, I wouldn't have anything to talk about.
Godfather probably wouldn't be your best friend.
No.
So good.
I talk so little about the actual wrestling. It's like it's stories that are.
People can go back and watch the wrestling.
They can watch
They
that.
can always watch.
They can watch
the
that.
boobs.
It's the
They're
stuff.
here for the other stuff.
Yeah, they're here for the good
other
stuff.
Are you able to stick around for? We got some questions from some fans that submitted questions they want.
Yeah, of course.
So, but we're going to end this episode on YouTube right now. I just want to say thank you to DraftKings, Happy Dad, First Form,
Awesome.
Bluechew.
Okay.
Yeah, Bluechew.
Yeah.
God bless them.
Yeah.
Chew it and do it. Steroids for your wiener. Magic Spoon, some healthy cereal.
Yeah, my kids love it.
Oh man, it's good stuff. So thank you to all of our sponsors. Thank you, Theo.
Thank you.
If you're a member of
I
our,
thorouly enjoyed this.
it's like, man, this might be your favorite guest so far. Yeah.
And we don't live far from each other.
Right here. Yeah.
It don't matter. Y'all aren't ever
Yeah,
going
we're
to
not
see
going
each
to leave
other.
our
we're never
houses.
gonna see each other.
That'd make it even
But
better.
just knowing that we're there, it's
Right?
He's gonna be like, hey, I've got to
Theo's,
come.
I bet he's out there doing nothing too.
Yeah.
I bet he's messing with the chickens
he's
and the
just
goats.
hiding out.
It's gonna be one of those things where like you just text, hey, I'm just letting you know I'm driving through Dripping Springs.
I bet you has headphones on and nothing's on it, just so people I just do all the time. I just keep them
do that at the airport so you can actually hear
All
what's
the
going on.
time.
But yeah.
I have them on, but there's nothing playing. That's a do not disturb sign on your body.
It worked
All right.
again. It worked again.
Well, if you're part of our Patreon channel, go over to
Yes.
that. We're going to do the Q&A. If not, go sign up so you can get the Q&A here from Mr. Theo Rossi.
Get on that Patreon.